let's understand while the white beans came through Ellis Island, the yellow beans are going to find their way to the United States through what that last documentary shared with you, Angel Island. So let's go and visit the main entry point for Asians, known as Angel Island. And Angel Island is located near San Francisco in the Bay Area. Let's go visit Angel Island.
It's one thing to read about the history of a place like this in a book, and it's a completely different experience to see the history on the walls.
It's a place, it's a site. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can smell it.
I didn't know that they were detained here, and I just can't imagine how they must have felt.
These walls do talk, and they tell us what the experience was of the immigrants who actually stayed here and what they had to go through.
From 1910 to 1940, tens of thousands of immigrants entered the United States through the Angel Island Immigration Station, which is located near San Francisco. All over its walls, carvings in many languages reveal a unique story about those who came through it. The building and its history was forgotten and nearly lost until California State Park Ranger Alexander Weiss rediscovered it in 1970. That moment began the long journey to save the immigration station, to preserve the stories that the carvings tell, and to help us remember their sad but important place in American history.
Part of my job as a park ranger was to know the park. So I came to the immigration station area, which was then closed to the public, but I wanted to take a look at it and see what was there. And I just walked in and looked around. I went on and walked around some more and found that almost every square inch of every room I went into had something carved into the walls in calligraphy or other interesting things. Well, when I first saw them, I was just impressed by, wow, there's a whole story to be told here. It was like ghosts were in there.
Immigrants from many countries came through this building. More than half were from China and Japan, but others came from Russia, India, and Central and South America. The carvings reflect the different people who came through, but the great majority of those carvings were poems written in Chinese.
My name is Dale Ching, and I was here detained back in 1937. I was here for 3.5 months.
Dale Ching was 16 years old when he first came to America. Even though his father was born in the United States, he still had to go through the immigration station.
So when you get off the ferry, what I call it, a welcome party is waiting for us, which is armed guard uniform. Well, you're lonely and you're afraid of it. You're not going to be able to see your family at all. You will be all by yourself here. Just look at outside, you got the high fence and barbed wires all around it. I'm just waiting for to be free from here.
離時父母恨匆匆
When I left, my parents regretted it was so hurried.
飲怨連連
The reason I tearfully swallow my resentment is because of poverty. Wishing to escape permanent poverty, I fled overseas.
誰教命傳
Who caused my destiny to be so perverse that I would become imprisoned?
侵凌各族
The victim of aggression, people of our nation mourn the desperate times.
未報親恩抱
I feel sorely guilty for having not yet repaid my parents' kindness.
今也命從哀
Grieving the cold night, the insects now make noise. Not only do I sob silently, but my throat tastes bitter.
Gold had been discovered in California in 1848, and sojourners came to make their fortune. As more and more people arrived, competition for jobs increased. Many European laborers who felt that America should only belong to whites began to organize against non-white workers, and in particular against the Chinese. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, a law which aimed to prevent Chinese immigrant laborers from entering the United States. This was the first in a series of laws that began to limit immigration from specific ethnic groups. On the East Coast, Ellis Island had been receiving immigrants since 1892. While Ellis Island has been a symbol of welcome to immigrants, Angel Island has a sadder story to tell.
Often it's sort of misphrased that Angel Island's called, the Ellis Island of the West. Most immigrants at Ellis Island stayed there for a few hours, whereas immigrants on Angel Island stayed here anywhere from 3 to 5 days up to, several weeks and up to several months, and in some cases years.
You're locked up, and people are asking you all sorts of hard questions, and you're surrounded by people speaking to you in a language you don't know. Who hasn't ever felt left out before? And what if a whole race of people felt left out? And that's what happened in that time period.
In order to be allowed to enter the United States, Chinese immigrants had to go through grueling interrogation sessions. Felicia Lowe recalls finding records from her father's sessions.
I think the most profound image I have of particularly my father going through the immigration experience was looking through the documentation, and after each interview they had to sign their names. And one had really shaky handwriting. And when I saw that, it really caught me in my gut, because I thought he must have really been scared that day.
The Park administration had planned to demolish the immigration station. Upon hearing this, Alex Weiss initiated a movement that eventually led to the building's preservation as a National Historic Landmark.
I felt that was not the right thing to do because calligraphy and all that would be gone. I was taking a course at San Francisco State College from a biology professor, Dr. Araki. I mentioned to him that there was an immigration station with all this calligraphy and it was going to be burnt down. He said, wow, he'd like to see that. And so I brought Dr. Araki and Mac Takahashi out and we photographed about every square inch of the walls that we could. The word spread pretty rapidly and we were getting lots of Asian studies classes coming out from not just San Francisco State but other colleges in the area also. They had no idea that this was here, even though perhaps their parents had come through here or their grandparents. And so I told them that this was due for destruction and if they wanted to save it, write some letters or lobby to do something about it. After a while, I guess the lobbying took effect because they passed a bill to save the immigration station from destruction.
Today, when I think about Angel Island, I'm really excited that we're in a place where we are actively planning to restore it and preserve it.
The poems in the building were very important to the Asian American community. Over time, the building has decayed. Work is being done to save the building and its history for future generations. Efforts are being made to preserve the walls and the precious carvings they hold.
We knew that there is some writing here, some poetry, although it's very difficult to see. If you look closely, you can see slight difference in texture, slight difference in shadow. So we removed paint to learn more about the carvings, to learn more about how they were made, to make them easier to read so that people who can read Chinese would be able to translate the poetry. If we take off all of the paint, we're left with the bare wood, and that's what the wall looked like originally. Basically, the government was trying to paint over the carvings. They didn't want the carvings there, so they filled the carvings with putty and then painted over that.
When we first got here, actually the wood was extremely fragile, so it was very brittle to the touch. And so we strengthened the wood, so, you could touch it and the wood feels pretty solid. And then we pinned it back. I hope that my work would have preserved the building well enough that our future generation could come and stand here and see the poems and appreciate what people did in the past. Obviously, you know, people carved because they wanted their stories to be told. And so my hope is that in 100 years, their stories are kept being told.
The poems are an expression of the emotional state of the people who were here. They had really no other way of expressing themselves.
公到美域，
When I arrived in America, all I could do was gaze at the seawater in vain.
船泊碼頭
The，ship docked at the wharf, and I was transferred to the lonely island,
同胞數百，
together with several hundred countrymen. It is a slim hope to be the one fish to elude the net.
After 3.5 months in the immigration station, Dale Ching was given what he had been waiting for: permission to enter the United States.
The guard will come in and they call out names and they say Dai Fo. In Chinese, Dai Fo, that means the San Francisco Bar, freedom. They called my name and then I was so happy, running all over the place. Oh boy, that was a happy day.
The history is so important so that we understand what happened in the past and don't repeat the kinds of mistakes that we've made as a nation. This story is part of our American heritage, and it's really a place of healing and a place of learning, and that hopefully will persevere.
Young people should know the history of the United States, both right and wrong, the bad things we did, the good things we can do, and that they can be part of ensuring that racism doesn't occur again.
The history, no matter what kind of history, is very important for the next generation to know about it. And that is the reason, or you might say that's one of the reasons I come back here to tell my side of the story.
All right, it'd be nice if Trump would to get this message likewise about not repeating the same mistakes of the past.